Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff podcast. Short hiatus due to many logistical issues. We are back. I'm Ethan. As always, the most valuable Pete is with me. Hey, Pete. Welcome back.
Welcome back. It's been a couple of months. I don't want to say how long because it's embarrassingly long, but nonetheless, we are indeed back.
Let's dive into what we've been watching lately because I think we've got some thoughts on that, huh?
Absolutely. So I know that this is a bit, late. We're almost half of the way into the year, but let's do a quick recap on some of the shows that we have watched.
I mean, most recently, I have seen Ryan Gosling's Fall Guy.
Yeah, kicked off the Summer Movie Fest, which we're going to talk about probably in the next episode when we do our top 10 predictions.
That's right. And I've also seen the less controversial than I thought Civil War, which is a very American-centric movie. On the cinema side, those are the most recent films I've seen as we prepare for the bigger, summer blockbuster season.
Okay.
How about you?
I have been a little bit busier on the cinema side.
I like it. Not surprised. Tell me.
Not surprised. So I saw The Bricklayer. I saw The Beekeeper.
Oh, yeah.
I saw ISS.
Oh, yeah. I saw ISS. Actually, I did see ISS.
Lisa Frankenstein.
I did not see that.
I saw Argyle.
I saw that.
I was forced to watch Madam Web.
I did not see that.
I saw Kung Fu Panda.
Did not see that, but heard great things.
Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire.
Did not see that by choice.
Arcadian with my main man, Nicolas Cage.
I know you wouldn't miss that.
Yep, definitely would not. Most recently, I saw The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Oh, is that good?
It is better than I expected because it's based on a true story, which I did not know. And it's a Guy Ritchie production through and through.
Always happy to see Guy Ritchie.
So it was interesting. I don't think it was a phenomenal movie, but it wasn't bad. And then I saw a spate of films on streaming platforms that were released specifically on them. So Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal.
I did see Roadhouse. Yep.
Unfrosted, the latest Jerry Seinfeld movie, just came out a couple weeks ago.
Did not, but heard interesting things about it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
This is about the Pop-Tart. The creation of the Pop-Tart, right?
The fictional biopic of the Pop-Tart. That's exactly right. So this is...
Can I make an aside?
Please.
Since I'm sure this is going to be a ramble. I read something interesting that, Unfrosted has kind of highlighted that there's been so many films recently that have just kind of focused on pop culture historical events.
Or a product, right?
Right.
And that's
products.
Exactly right. I was literally about to make exactly the same comment. This falls along the lines of Air that we saw last year.
Yes.
Right? Which is a biopic, but not of a person, but of a product or a brand.
That's right.
So it's interesting because this is obviously very highly fictionalized.
Yeah. There was also the Beanie Babies movie.
Yeah. Tetris.
Tetris.
It's an interesting trend and one that I'm actually on board with.
I have to say I am as well, because I think it's really interesting. Remember, there used to be that movie about Star Wars as well. The Star Wars characters that Kenner made.
Yeah, The Toys That Made Us.
The Toys That Made Us, which is like a documentary.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm absolutely on board with this trend. I hope that they are always going to be a little bit neutral, because I think whenever the product company sponsors them, they're obviously going to show a very romanticized version of it, and it's not always the case. But I agree. I think a lot of these things really have interesting stories that should be told.
And it makes sense for things, for example, like Air Jordan. It makes sense for something like Tetris. These are, as you rightly said, a part of pop culture. They're beyond the corporate brand, right?
Yeah.
They're famous And they've almost become like the exemplar of those products. When you think of basketball shoes, you think of Air Jordans.
Flip it on its head. I wouldn't mind seeing a movie on products that failed as well. You know, like New Coke in the 80s, I think is a very prominent example, but I'm sure there's many others, you know, BlackBerry, for example. Oh, that's another good example, right?
We did see BlackBerry, yeah.
BlackBerry is an example of kind of the rise and the fall.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's really good lessons about the fall, you know? Yeah. So you're saying you saw Frosted. What else?
Yeah. So I saw Unfrosted. I finished part 2 of Rebel Moon, Zack Snyder's take on Star Wars.
Yeah. With about as little enthusiasm as you can muster.
Honestly, it was what a gut punch. It was just awful. Just awful.
I didn't love the first one, so I wasn't really thrilled to
but you know, I have this something about watching a movie that I know is a two-parter. Like once I started, even if it's absolutely pants, I kind of have to finish it. It takes a lot for it to be really bad that I will walk out in the middle of the season. And it happened, right? Like that happened with She-Hulk, for example. It was so bad that I stopped in the middle of She-Hulk season 1.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, the one thing you can say about Zack Snyder, at least his fight sequences and choreography are highly stylized and they can be fun, even if the movies are terrible. So this was terrible. And frankly speaking, the fight scenes didn't save anything. So you're just like, oh, yeah. Anyway. What have you been watching recently? I did try to convince you. I don't know if you saw it yet. So there's a couple of TV series that I've been watching and that I have been watching since the beginning of the year that I think are so good that I did try to convince you to watch them. I know Roadhouse wasn't a phenomenal movie, but I did say it's a fun movie.
I watched Roadhouse.
Yeah.
So let's take that one first. I watched Roadhouse. I would definitely give that a mooch. It's on Amazon Prime.
That's right.
Jake Gyllenhaal, I think, gives a very, very good performance.
Yeah.
He's obviously jacked in that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he gives a pretty good performance. And it's probably a pretty good modern take on the original story, right? With Patrick Swayze. But I don't think there is anything fantastic. There is some interesting camera angles and shots, you know, in the fight sequences. But in terms of the storyline or the character development, I think there's really nothing fantastic about that movie.
No, that's fair enough. For me, it exemplified what a good popcorn flick is, right?
Yeah.
You've got a couple hours to kill. You've got some very attractive people on screen. You've got some very intense action on scene. I will say one thing about this is the fight sequences reminded me a little bit of John Wick, which is to say, they weren't no guns involved, nothing like that. In the sense that when Jake Gyllenhaal threw a punch, I felt it through the screen. So like the fight sequences felt raw, it felt visceral. Yeah. You know, again, you're right. The camera angles were fun. It wasn't exactly the deepest storyline we've ever seen, but you know, it's a Jake Gyllenhaal action take on a movie from the 80s.
What'd you think of the cameo?
Oh, Conor McGregor? I'm not a fan of Conor McGregor for his off-camera antics. But, you know, he played the bad guy who's kind of like a psychopath or a sociopath quite well.
Yeah, I thought he was a very good villain in that role.
Yeah.
You know?
A typical action comedy bad guy, which is to say he did not take himself too seriously.
Yeah.
And you could tell, right? Especially with the way he's introduced in the show.
It's a good introductory role for him, right? I mean, there's a lot of action heroes, right? All the way back from Arnold Schwarzenegger and The Rock, you know, that have gotten their start in these kind of cheesy, where they're really in it just for their body, you know, for their physique, and for, you know, they play either a villain or a very, you know, simple hero, right? In a limited role. And that's kind of their introduction. And then they grow into something bigger. I could see, you know, if McGregor really wants to get into deeper roles, that's a good entry point for him. I would also say that, you know, someone like Rob Gronkowski, right? The former, you know, Patriot football player, that would be something that, you know, he would do as well, where he plays something like just a big meat-headed, you know, bad guy. And then, you know, he develops something a little bit more.
Yeah. And Roadhouse 2 just got greenlit at Amazon Prime. So
really?
Yeah.
the big one you convinced me of was Sugar on
man.
Apple TV Plus.
Oh my God. Yes.
Tell me how you found it and what was your like thought going into this?
So, very quick primer. Apple TV Plus program, it just ended literally 2 days ago, was the finale of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it was billed, and if you looked at the first trailer from, months ago, it was billed as like a film noir, at best, a neo-noir TV serial, right?
Yeah.
Where you have like this hard-boiled private detective who's basically specializes in finding missing people. And he's kind of like this no-nonsense, I like the cut of your jib straight from the 30s era type of guy.
Yeah.
And I love noir. Like, that is my jam. I love film noir. I love that kind of genre. We're talking Chinatown. We're talking The Big Sleep, The Maltese Falcon, all these movies from like the 20s, anything with Philip Marlowe, except for the most recent Liam Neeson one. All of these movies and TV shows from like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, I'm a big fan. And this felt it along the way. And the way I sold it to you, though, was that this is the first TV series I've ever seen where mid-series they seamlessly pull off a genre switch.
Did you see this coming? Or did you know this was coming?
I did not see this coming. And it was one of those things where when you start thinking about it in retrospect, you're like, oh, I should have seen it coming. They telegraphed it
100%.
so subtly and so beautifully. And I'm just like, what? It really caught me off guard. And it went from a film noir, hard-boiled detective story to a sci-fi show. And it blew me away. And the moment I saw that genre switch, I immediately messaged you. And when we spoke, I said, stop what you're doing. You have to watch this, because by the beginning of the second half of this series, I promise you'll be in, because I know you like sci-fi as much as I do.
So you were right about this. We'll do ratings in a moment, but I was also, so first of all, I was happy with the first half of the series. I mean, I'm thrilled with the whole thing, but I was happy with the first half. I thought it was a very good, as you mentioned, film noir, traditional private investigator type series. And Colin Farrell has really become a very respected actor.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when he was much, much, much younger, he had a lot of swagger, but it didn't really seem like he was actually going to, end up as a serious type actor. With some of his more recent roles, he's really changed the narrative, and I think he's become very, very skilled on screen. So I think he does a great job. And to be honest, I'd liked the story. Like, I thought it was a very good series. It was a little bit slow on pace, but it definitely, kept your attention. But then when they did the genre switch, I did not see it coming, and I was really angry at myself. And I was angry at myself because there's something that I've now started to do, which is, they've got like the intro, they've got the music, and they've got like the credits, and I've started to skip that.
Okay.
I mean, just because, oftentimes, again, when you see like 8 episodes, it's the same music and the same visuals, and I skip it for 2 reasons. One is, either it doesn't have anything to do with the show. So, it's just some fanciful artwork and graphics and stuff that doesn't really add anything, or it's like cuts from the future episodes. And I actually don't want to see that imagery because I don't want like any spoilers. In this sense, I was really angry at myself, or frustrated with myself, that I didn't ever watch it. I skipped through it right away. Because if you watch it again, there's some very, very subtle clues in there that should have told me that there's something more to this than just kind of a PI show. So I should have kind of seen it coming, or I wish I would have seen it coming. But the genre switch, I think, was incredible. Are we doing spoiler alerts?
We definitely should.
We are.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an alien. He's a blue alien.
Yeah.
what are the subtle things in the story that telegraphed it that we should have picked up on? One was that he processed, like he couldn't get drunk, right?
Couldn't
he processed
get drunk.
which isn't on its own that unique, but it was a tell in
The
a way.
ability to pick up languages like anything.
Yeah. We did know when they had that group kind of like
the Mensa
happy
thing.
hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely knew that group was special. We kind of were led to believe that maybe they were all like involved in like espionage or agents or something, but we knew that group was very special somehow.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is when he went to that one, I'm going to forget the bad guy's name, but like they kind of had him pinned down and then he moved like apparently extremely fast.
Yeah.
To kind of like take out all those bad guys. That was kind of like a superhero moment where I don't know what I thought when that happened, but it was definitely caught my attention that he had like some sort of like special skills or something, you know? But they did it also in a very subtle way that like a lot of camera cuts and angles that you didn't really get to see exactly what he did. But the implication was he is a superb fighter, you know?
Yeah. The tremors, right? With his hand.
The tremors. Yeah, that's very subtle. Yeah.
So my instinct told me at that point that, okay, these guys are all the result of like some kind of military experiment.
Oh.
I thought that these guys were all just regular people who were at some point working for the military.
Like Jason Bourne.
Jason Bourne, or kind of like Captain America, like a super soldier program of some sort.
Yeah.
And that, you know, they were that eventually that group party that they had that was like the gathering.
Yeah.
I thought that was just them getting together as kind of like, we're the lucky losers who lived through this after this whole program was disbanded. And this is how we kind of keep each other grounded. It kind of like an emotional or even a physical support group.
Yeah. I thought that was fantastic. What did you think of the ending? Because you told me that you loved the ending. I don't know if it really stuck with me. Tell me what you thought of the ending.
So the twist is that the bad guy was one of them. And that's what blew me away. And not just one of them, but
Henry.
his best friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that the reason we find out that the reason Colin Farrell is kind of like the guy who goes around looking for missing people is because his sister, the alien, was also taken from him at an early age. And he's been looking for her forever.
Right.
And then we find out at the end that it was Henry who potentially was the one who took her.
Yeah.
So I was just, I did not see that coming.
I didn't see it coming. I have to say the sci-fi part of this was very subtle.
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciate that it didn't get too weird on us. It didn't talk about like crazy technologies. It really kind of kept it in the background that we know that they've got some type of, you know, abilities, but it didn't really make that the emphasis of the show. It was still a PI show.
Yeah.
And I think it set itself up. The last episode set itself up very well for a second season if they want to do it.
And this is such an Apple thing to do. I think they'll lean into the sci-fi element more going forward.
Yeah.
Now that the cat's really out of the bag, I think that they can be like, all right, I don't have a problem putting Colin Farrell in more blue makeup so that we kind of see him as this bald alien from another dimension or whatever.
Yeah, very, very good twist. Okay, that's Sugar.
So that was a must subscribe for me, by the way.
I'm not going to go with a must subscribe. I'm not going to fight you on it. For me, that's still a mooch. But I mean, to the extent that I can have a very, very high mooch or a very, very low must subscribe, that's where I put it. But again, if it was only for that show on Apple TV Plus, you know, if it was my brother, for example, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, I'm only going to do one. You know, should I do it just to see Sugar? I would not say that.
No, of course not.
I think it's a fantastic show. And I think if you have Apple TV Plus, you must watch it. But I would not subscribe to Apple TV Plus only to get those 8 episodes.
No, and I didn't think so, which is why I said that if it weren't for that mid-season twist, I don't think I would have even bothered mentioning it to you.
Yeah, I agree. Even though without that twist, I thought the show was very, very good, though. I thought Colin Farrell was very good. All the characters were very, very interesting. I have to say, it was a very, very well done program by Apple TV Plus.
I know we're a couple months behind it. Sticking to Amazon Prime for a second.
Yeah.
I also do recommend Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which was a show I did not expect to like, and I ended up loving it.
How many episodes did you watch?
I finished the whole series.
Oh, boy. I watched 3 or 4. I ended up where they were in the Swiss Alps, maybe, on this mission.
Yeah.
So tell me what you liked about it. So it's Donald Glover and a lady that's well accomplished, but I never came across before.
Yes. A quick recap. This is the TV series version of the famous Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie movie.
Yeah. That movie, by the way, I think we should say is iconic for pop culture reasons and also for for
celebrity
cinema reasons, right?
Celebrity gossip reasons.
Yeah, I mean that's I think and even the movie itself, even notwithstanding their romance, obviously, or their marriage, it apparently started from that movie. That movie was very redeeming in a lot of ways, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a little bit cheesy when you watch it now, but I mean, it was both of those kind of at their prime, and there was a lot to like about that movie.
Yeah, this is the TV serialized version of that movie. Unlike that movie, which was much more an action comedy, right? It was kind of like a rom-com / action / traditional comedy.
Right.
This is much less focused on the espionage and the premise of, the two people working together as spy / hitmen. This was much more, I thought, focused on the relationship between the two.
Absolutely.
Because the premise is that, the Mr. and Mrs. Smith program is that you apply to this program to become assassins, and they pair you off in a relationship, and you've never met this other person.
Right.
And so you become a couple, and you have to kind of learn to live with each other and be with each other and come off as like a pair in a loving relationship so that you can pull off these assignments that are given to you. So what I liked about this was that we did see a lot of the espionage stuff, but that was almost kind of like just the premise. The real meat and potatoes of each episode was about the relationship that these guys were building up and developing, from being total strangers to having a mutual level of respect, but also distrust, to actually becoming a couple, to then having more distrust or, other relationship issues, and how that plays out in a world of these kinds of assassinations. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. When it was first announced, I thought this was a terrible idea. I thought this was just a total waste of time. I thought this was going to be a skip, and it ended up being a must subscribe.
Oh boy. Must subscribe.
I've always been a little bit, let's say, generous.
Yeah, but you're a romantic. So a few things about the show. I mean, I actually do like the way that it's been positioned.
Yeah.
I like Donald Glover a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't dislike the woman, but I think that that's a very strange casting pair in a show like this for reasons that I don't want to come across as the wrong way. They stick out, especially, when you're going to like a ski resort, you have a black dude and an Asian lady. They stick out. If your goal is to have your spies blend in a little bit, that is not a group I think that makes a lot of sense to put together, right? They can fit in a lot of different places, but at the same time, they also stick out a lot. So I think the casting for spies is a little bit curious, even though I like them kind of individually.
Sure.
Like I'm a big Donald Glover fan. I guess my second issue is it is really focused on the relationship stuff, and that's okay. But I guess I would have liked it to have been a little bit more of the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where we knew that they were in a relationship and we didn't have as much backstory to them. And we are starting to get the backstory in terms of how they met, how they got together. Here we start at the very beginning, and I feel like it comes together only like in a few episodes, which is a little bit too fast for me. I would have, like the other couple that they met.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that other couple that they met, I thought that was a more compelling couple. I would have liked to have gotten into their lives and seen how they do things, and then had like that mystery, like how did they get together? Like, were they matched up? Was it random? Did they do this together? I think that keeping that as a secret would have been more enjoyable to me than how we just saw it kind of up front. And then it just materialized very, very abruptly, because now there's not a whole lot more mystery about this show. I mean, I'm not really interested about either their pasts prior to them entering into the program. And I feel like since it's not based on action, it's based more on, their romantic lives and personal relationships. There's not a whole lot more value for me to get out of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
No, I get it. I totally get it.
So I would say this is also a mooch. A little bit better than I expected. I mean, I really like Donald Glover, and I like his character. I mean, his character is very, very vulnerable, right? I mean, he definitely is meant for relationships and, family life. I mean, time and time again, he kind of says, yeah, I'll go into low risk, I'm happy to, let's have a family. He seems to be much more into, family and personal relationships than she does, than
right.
Jane does. So that's Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Did you watch Fallout?
I watched the first 2 episodes based on what you told me. It didn't stick with me, but I know that you loved it. You said it's fantastic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was a wonderful show. And I thought, when I finished it, I had this, let's say, dream scenario in the back of my mind that every writer and showrunner and director on the Halo TV series turned off the TV and then threw their TV out the window because of how good their video game adaptation was versus how bad the Halo video game adaptation is.
So let's take it a step back. You played Fallout as a video game, right?
I did, yes.
And you loved it, or
loved
like you?
It's a great, it's one of the best RPGs I've played.
What's so great about Fallout as a game?
Just the premise is very good. The premise is very simple. 1950s era America. They've just come out of war. It's, super industrialized. You've got, flying cars and hover cars and things like that. And then a nuclear war breaks out and everyone is blaming everyone else. And the whole world is basically destroyed. And as a part of saving humanity, there are a bunch of vaults built underground, and people restart society based on those vaults. And the idea is that everyone's going to stay in those vaults for a couple hundred years and then emerge when, all the radiation is gone, and then they're going to be able to restart society. And then, of course, you find out that that's not exactly what has happened.
What exactly has happened?
So in each game, it's different, but like you find out that the vaults were actually built to become science experiments. You find out that society above ground wasn't destroyed, that there are people still out there living, that sort of thing. So all these people were duped into going into these vaults as a science experiment, not because they thought they were saving humanity.
Do you find any comparisons between this and Silo? Remember, we love Silo.
Yeah, kind of, but I don't know much about Silo. There are some similarities. I never read the books. I'm interested to see how that goes. But the whole point was, anyway, Fallout 4 is much more of a comic book version of that, in the sense that things are to the extremes, right? So you have like mutant bears, you have mutant roaches, you have mutants running around, ghouls, and all kinds of beasts and monsters that exist because of radiation. I don't know how true all of that is, but.
And what did you like about the show that made it like so good compared to the video games?
So first of all, very, very, very truthful to the video game universe. And what they did was they said that, hey, look, every game is very, very, in the series is very revered by the gamers. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the world of Fallout, but we're not going to mess with any of the established storylines. We'll create a new storyline set in an established universe, which was the right thing to do. the modern Fallout game started with Fallout 3, 4, and then in between there was a game called New Vegas. This doesn't touch upon any of those. You can see some similarities and you can see some very reverential references, but they do not touch those storylines. And the whole point
characters are different, or characters are the same
in between the different games.
No, between like the show and the games.
Oh, everyone is totally different. Everyone is a wholly original character.
Okay.
And even within the games, like Fallout 3 is unrelated to Fallout 4, is unrelated to New Vegas.
So that's Fallout.
So
you've been busy on Amazon Prime, but we didn't talk about Wheel of Time.
Season 2 I saw, but that was a last year show, so I did see that.
All right. I have to catch up on Wheel of Time Season 2 then.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we're missing on Amazon Prime?
Not on Amazon Prime, or at least not one that I've seen on Amazon Prime.
Okay. The other thing I heard was great. I don't know where it is Shogun?
Yeah, so it's, I think, on Disney, actually, or Hulu. But yes, I'm desperate to watch that as well. I haven't had time yet.
I've heard it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've heard it's fantastic. And also Season 2 of Tokyo Vice, which I haven't seen either.
Oh, so that was on my list I was about to talk about. It is a must watch. There's no comparison. It is one of the best of this year already. I can tell you that it'll definitely be in my top 5. It was so good.
We have to watch Shogun and I have to watch Tokyo Vice.
Yeah. I know you are not a huge fan of animated shows, but X-Men 97 just finished.
Oh, is it good?
It is a return to classic MCU animated series. Wonderful.
Why is it called X-Men 97?
Because it's a continuation of the 1990s animated show.
Oh, I don't think I ever watched that one.
Also one of the best. The 1990s was basically the time of adult-oriented animated superhero shows. So Batman was excellent. The Amazing Spider-Man was great. X-Men was phenomenal. All of these superhero shows really cemented themselves as saying, hey, even though we're an animated show, which mostly people will think of as a children's show, these are really adult topics, right? And we're going to focus and we're going to lean in hard on that.
So if we look at the MCU, what is the future of X-Men there?
Well, we've got Deadpool and Wolverine coming out this summer.
Yeah. It's Deadpool and Wolverine in one movie, right?
Yeah. So Deadpool 3 is Deadpool and Wolverine.
And who's playing Wolverine?
Hugh Jackman.
He's coming back, right?
Yeah, he's back. The trailer is out and it looks phenomenal. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
So just give me some background. Why are these two teaming up?
Obviously, I don't know. We haven't seen the movie, but it looks like this is how they're going to introduce the X-Men into the MCU.
Or introduce Deadpool into the MCU, right?
Well, both.
Yeah. So those two somehow team up. Oh, I'm looking forward to our summer blockbuster episode next week then.
Yeah.
We got to do some research.
I'm very much looking forward to that. But that's the only MCU movie out this year.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Fall Guy or Civil War?
I didn't see either of them. Civil War never came out. I'm still in India. It never came out here. And Fall Guy, I haven't seen.
Oh my gosh. Let me give you a brief about Civil War.
Okay.
I thought Civil War, there's no secret that, American politics is very fractured and contentious right now. I thought this was going to be kind of like a uprising, something similar to what we saw in some flashbacks in The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a minor spoiler alert, if you don't mind.
No, please.
It doesn't really go to the genesis of things. It just shows that there are different, factions, that are kind of fighting for control of the country. But the story isn't really centered around that. It's more centered around kind of like a human interest story, kind of similar to what you've seen in 2012. There was The Day After Tomorrow. There was Greenland, all these movies, San Andreas, right? Where there's big disasters, but it's always focused kind of on the family getting from here to safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the focus of the movie. It has less to do with, the backdrop of the chaos is the Civil War, but the focus of the movie is more the human interest and the relationships and we're trying to get from point A to point B. So
Right.
I thought in a few ways I was a little bit disappointed because I was looking for some good drama. But in the other way, I guess I was a little bit happy that it didn't really focus on some awful hypothetical situation and that type of like violence and discord. Instead, it just kind of made that a backdrop like, hey, this is happening. We're not exactly going to go into the hows and the whys and such. It's just happening. But with that as a backdrop, this is kind of the story.
Yeah.
There's a message in there somewhere, of course. I mean, it depends on your perspective. I think everyone will take a different message from it, but I think definitely there's kind of a message in there. And I think generally the message is we should all try to get along because the alternative is not better for anybody, which is, I think, the most watered down message you can give, but that will still resonate kind of with everyone, regardless of their beliefs, positions, or so forth.
Right.
So that's Civil War. I think it's definitely a wait for stream, but if you go, you will not walk out of it midway. Then I saw The Fall Guy. Do you remember The Fall Guy, the TV show in the 80s?
Yes, I do.
I mean, Lee Majors and Heather, not Locklear, Heather, whoever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were like stars at the time, right? So I remember that show very fondly. And when I watched the trailer of the new Fall Guy, it looked very silly to me. But I have to say, I was very, very impressed by the movie. I think you will also be impressed by the very, very witty banter.
Okay.
In fact, some of the banter I saw it with someone whose, first language is not English. And some of the jokes I was laughing at, but they were like extremely subtle and, weren't picked up by the person I went with. But I thought they were very, very, very good writing. Storyline is a little bit, it's not bad. Considering the genre of the movie, I have to say it's probably better than would be expected. I was expecting something pretty simple. This was a little bit better with a little bit of twist and such, but certainly it's not going to blow you out of the water with the complexity, but I thought it was pretty good. But I thought Gosling played a fantastic role. Probably even better than his work as Ken in Barbie. I thought he was, and way better than the Gray Man. I thought he was actually very, very good in this movie. And I thought that the dialogue was fantastic. I would say this is a must-see in cinemas. I thought it was way better than I expected, actually.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Excellent. I'm actually looking forward to that then.
So those are the things I've seen recently. And I know there's going to be a bunch of new stuff out as well. Right now, what's in cinemas, nothing's really captivated me, but I know now that we're kind of at the end of May, mid-May, the blockbuster season's going to kick off soon. So we should definitely have our predictions next week then.
I agree.
Okay, Pete, do we have any other topics on this one?
Not on the 2024 catch-up. I think you and I have got a lot of homework to do to catch up for the last couple of months. And then we've got surprisingly a fair amount of stuff coming out this year, which I wasn't expecting. House of the Dragon's coming out.
House of the Dragon's coming out.
Yellowstone, the finale season's coming out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I heard there's a rumor that the second season of Andor is coming out this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Acolyte's coming out this year. The trailer just dropped for that.
That's right.
The trailer for Dune Prophecies just dropped.
Is that what the last one's called?
No, Dune Prophecy is the Max TV series, which is a prequel. It's the founding of the Bene Gesserit.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so this takes place like literally centuries before Dune, the movies take place. And that's it on my radar at the moment.
So that is this episode of Films and Stuff. We'll be back next week with our 2024 summer blockbuster predictions. Ethan versus Pete, mano a mano.
Round 2, baby.
Winner takes bragging rights. Maybe has to buy the tickets and the popcorn for Dune 3 in the year 2026.
Or whenever it finally is greenlit and approved.
Okay. Everyone, thank you for tuning in after a small hiatus. We will see you more regularly now on the Films and Stuff podcast.
That's right. If you have any comments, if you have any suggestions, if you have any, anything, even if it's not related to films and stuff, we're happy to talk to you. Reach out to us. You can tweet at us at F&S Podcast. You can email us at aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Always leave a comment below this video.
Ring the bell.
Subscribe, ring the bell, all that usual YouTube jazz helps us out greatly. But until then, we'll see you next time on the Films and Stuff Podcast.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye
Ethan.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.